namaste, good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even good evening in whichever part of the world you are joining us from. My name is Deepak R. Khemani and I welcome you to Bloom. Bloom is the brainchild of Miss Payal Irani. Bloom is a flower that has blossomed and is spreading its fragrance across the globe. At Bloom, we are into physical and mental wellness, trainings, speaking engagements, and creating signature workshops for corporates and individuals desiring to go to the next level. Bloom has a powerful and a dynamic team which has been handpicked. They are the who's who in their respective domains, industry veterans having an accumulated 200 plus years of experience specializing in their own field. At Bloom, we strongly believe in co-creation, collaboration, and teamwork. I invite each and every one of you to be a part of Bloom, where together we grow, and as Bloom blossoms, it creates ripples the world over. Today, we have a dynamic personality who is on our show. I will ask Dr. Neeta to take the show ahead and start with the Q&A.
Thank you, Deepak sir, and we welcome Payal. Payal, there is a lot to talk about you. And of course, I do not want to get into the profile reading, but straight diving deep into the Q&A. Of course, we will be introducing you and we will be talking all about your accolades, all about your awards, all about your books, but in an order where it also adds value to our audiences.
Sure.
So understanding, Payal, that you come from the background of being an executive coach, a business executive coach. So could you just tell our audience what is all about the 3I model of business executive coaching?
Thank you so much, Dr. Neeta. First of all, thank you to Payal Irani and the entire Bloom team for having me here. It's an honor to be amongst great minds like all of you. So when, in my work as an executive coach for the corporate leaders and for some of the top CEOs, I talk to them on various aspects of the I. In fact, in one of the books, I have also written about the power of I. Okay? So if I were to pick any 3I that I really work on with them, one of them is influence. Okay? The other one is intention. And the other one is implementation. And I think if all three of them are combined together, that's what helps you to become one of the greatest leaders of your time. You must have a great, a very good intention towards people and towards your work. You must be able to implement. I know of many people, Dr. Neeta, who have great ideas, and it's just flowing into their mind, but the execution part of it is the weakest for them. And then you should be able to influence your people. You should be able to influence them to do great things. It's not about you, it's about your people at all times.
I so agree that when you talk about implementing, when you talk about influencing, and taking action is the prime domain in the space of leadership. Mm-hmm. Because unless the leader doesn't walk the talk, it's very difficult to get into the space where you are as an influencer adding values to your people around you in your organization. So definitely, it's not been a very good and a very plain journey for you. Definitely understanding that it has been a roller coaster ride while you have been coaching, while you have been also asking the leaders to implement some new things. So could you share some unusual cases, because your profile is really exuberant and a lot of corporates have been taking that pride in, collaborating or maybe taking your services. So could you just share with our audiences some unusual leadership dynamics which you have faced during this journey of 22 years of your experience?
That's a wonderful question, Dr. Neeta. So your question takes me back to in the years when I had started, I left corporate America and wanted to get into this, really helping people to become successful at doing what they want to do. And I think the biggest leadership dynamic, or I would say the biggest leadership challenge that I have ever crossed in my life is to really believe in my work and in myself. I don't think there has been any other challenge which I must have had so much of, time that I have taken to cross, as much as I have taken to cross that obstacle of really trusting my work, in trusting what I am doing and what I'm offering, and really believing that I could do this. And there were, and the reason this belief wasn't in me was for a very was for a fact that when I was leaving corporate America to get into executive coaching and leadership speaking, and that too in a white male dominated society, a field which is white male dominated. One of the biggest things that well-wishers, I should say, had always told me was that it's a career suicide. Okay, there is, they would always say, hey, Payal, this is a career suicide. There is no person of women, specifically women of Indian descent, to be in the field of leadership speaking and executive coaching and book writing. And they said it's never going to be accepted. And I think that somehow played in my mind for a very long time. And whenever I would, start to approach anyone for that matter for my work and to explain to them why it is very different and why I'm doing what I'm doing, I think somewhere back of the mind, I always had this, oh yeah, you know what? There is no one like this and there is not going to be. So I think I'm on the wrong track. But when I overcame that belief, when I overcame and I did work on this aspect of my work, I think it was a huge game changer for me and for me to move ahead and take that path. So I think that's been one of the biggest obstacles that I have ever had to cross. And until date, I tell people that in your own life, the biggest leadership obstacle you're ever going to face is to really trust in your ability, your innate quality to lead and succeed.
It's really amazing. And the best part is what you have been expressing is being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is really so strong and so powerful. And when you talk about being biased and coming from the Indian origin and taking up leadership, definitely I understand there would have been a lot of challenges. And at times, even when you question yourself, am I really on the right track? This is really what do I want to pursue? So there would have been a lot of emotions which you would have yourself would have been facing. And how did you handle all those things?
I think for me, Dr. Neeta, it flowed after I started to really come out of that phase that it's really not the country or the people that really pull you down. It's you who have to validate yourself. It's you who diminishes your own quality and your abilities. And rather than hyperventilating around everywhere that, hey, you know what, it's because of the country, it's because of the people, it's because of my gender or color or anything. I think if we know how to take that stand, that, like for example, in my case, like you said, I started to really focus more on the content that I am providing. And one of the biggest things that happened in my life, I think it was just the blessing of the universe. I cannot take credit for it, even 1%. Right from the beginning of my career in 1998, when I completed my master's in human resources and I started to get into the workforce, I think it was just a blessing from the universe that I had been always had this opportunity to be associated with some of the great minds in the world. Okay, and when I say that, I mean, CEOs of companies that would usually you would not get an opportunity to meet. And I had an opportunity to not only meet, but interact with them. In my own work, I was able to reach to the CEOs of the companies to talk to them about various procedures and policies and some ideas that I would have. So, and this cycle just went along. And even till date, on my podcast, I have some of the world's best leaders and political leaders join in. And I think that's when I realized that, okay, you know what, I want to take this, what, you know, whatever these people are doing at the top is not being done by majority of the people. And that's why, if you notice, Dr. Neeta, I'm sure many people would agree with this. We are in an age of information. We are in an age where everything is available at the tip of our fingers. You want to know how to be successful, how to be a great leader, how to reach the top in your career, you just log on, go and ask Google, and it will give you pages and pages of information. Okay. But at the same time, if you have observed closely, despite of all of this, there is a huge gap in our society between people who are really successful, between some of the top leaders and exceptional leaders and top businesses. And then there is 75% of the people who have the knowledge, the ability, they are working hard, but the needle is not moving significantly for them. So constantly there was this question for me, especially because I was told that, hey, you know what, you are in a country which is full of you know, you're in a country which is full of opportunities. It's a country which is full of successful people. This is America, you know. And when I was there, and all the time that I am still here, I always feel, I said, no, there is this huge gap. Why is this huge gap, even in a country which is spending more than 7.6 billion in trainings and self-help books? Everyone should be successful, which means there is something missing in our corporate world. And that one question changed my life. You know, all the time I had this question in my mind, what's creating this gap? How do you close this gap between people and get more and more people in the companies to become successful, more and more businesses to thrive in any economy? And that question made me do a lot of research. You know, I am a person, and even today my team is in a lot of research, a research on how our brains function, how do human, what's the science behind human thinking, why do we act in a certain way while making a decision. So all of this became the threshold, and I began to cross every obstacle, taking all of this and moving ahead. And I think in my work right now, my only focus is to make sure that this gap reduces, not just in America, but now here in India also. And that's what we have been focusing on, Dr. Nida.
That's really brilliant. And actually, it is a very amazing tool if utilized properly. And I think that this is really keeping you very, very different than the people who are in this space and in this domain of leadership. This attitude of learning, this attitude of researching, I think can really help each and everyone to bridge that gap. And understanding research and understanding, because I believe a lot in research and seeing the world today, everything later on is going to come with research, plagiarism, and only working with your content. Definitely everything is available at your fingertips, but is there a specific leadership and a most impactful leadership execution in any of the corporate, where apart from when we do a basic TNA, that is a training need analysis, though the corporates, they tell us ki this is not what I really want, and you as an executive coach could figure it out ki the problem is not what they are showing, but the problem is somewhere else. Where you be able to highlight something on these areas, please, as an executive coach?
So is your question more directed towards that the company has certain needs, but when I speak with them, I feel that they have not done a proper need analysis. Is that?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yes.
Because then it is completely changing the whole space, completely giving them new ideas about what they need to implement. And at times, people are not ready for change, though we are aware that change itself is constant,
Yes.
but we are not ready for this change.
Absolutely. And I think that happened, most of this happened to me very early on. I think it was the year of 2007 when I had begun to start thinking about leaving corporate America and getting into this field. That's the time when I had the major problem of actually, you know, letting people know especially in the corporate world, letting the decision makers know that the leadership techniques out there are really are old techniques right now. Okay, because if you go to see, we have come from the age of industrial development to the AI age. You really cannot expect the leaders to lead with the same thought process, with the same thinking, and with the same techniques. So, for example, I'll give you a quick example. I had been once asked, we want to train our leaders on specific leadership styles. And I remember sitting there talking to this executive, and he's asking me, he said, which leadership style will be best suited for my leaders? I said, there is no leadership style. Those are the old days. That's history. What we grew up with, authoritative leadership, and those are all history right now. Things are changing. Things have been changing for many years now. And if you're going to teach your leaders the same leadership techniques, the same leadership style, I can just assure you they are not going to go very far. And if they don't go very far, your company isn't going to reach anywhere. So how do so that's a process for me where how do you explain to them, what is it that they are looking for? How do we fill that gap? And for that, you have to be you have to know what you're speaking about, right? So when we are explaining this to them, that's when it clicks to them. Oh, okay, there is no such leadership style. Then what's the new leadership style? The new leadership style is depending on your environment, on your people, where you are, what type of work are you looking at, where do you see your business growing? I need those numbers. I need everything to make sure that I can deliver what you want, not what I want. So that's how we begin to fill that gap. And just like you rightly said, Dr. Neeta, many people are not ready for the change. So it does take time because human mind, like I said, we do a lot of research based on quantum physics and the science of the brain. And human mind is always wired for survival. And survival means I do not want to change. I'm comfortable. My work is going on. That's great. No, you're not here to survive. You are here to thrive. And that's where you need to begin to change.
So rightly said that you are here to thrive. You are not here to strive. And secondly, which you said was very beautiful, which I really could understand, that leadership is not one size which fits all. Each and every person, each and every organization, and each and every corporates have their own do's, don'ts, have their own stretching abilities, environment, surroundings, and also a work culture. Coming to the work culture, I see there is a drastic change when probably you might have started 22 years back and today. The whole dynamic of leadership has changed more holistically, has been evolved, and is evolving every day around. So can you highlight on some of the tools which you have been using in a holistic development of a leader, be it be a CEO, be it be a CXO, be it be a CFO? Because at times we do not use the logic. And when you sit at a position, when you sit with that chair, there is a lot of logic. So how do you blend the whole thing?
So I think, especially if I was to talk about the executives, okay, I'll give you a very recent incident. When the pandemic hit, there were a couple of most of the executives were very worried about what the numbers would look like. And Wall Street was putting up a lot of pressure on most of these executives to showcase their numbers and to keep up with their numbers. So I know many executives who at that time, started to hide behind the desk. They were not confident. And despite knowing exactly where we have to go, they were hiding behind the desk. Many of them were asking questions to me and to many others, like, questions like, when will this end? How is it going to go? What are the numbers we are looking at? And Wall Street is very unforgivable. So you have to make sure that your numbers are right. And even if your numbers are not right, how are you portraying them out there is what the main question is. So during these times, I observed that there were a couple of CEOs, especially in the IT industry, who had a lot of pressure to go from hardware to software because that was what was selling during that time of a point of time when the economy was failing everywhere. And for them to go to the software meant a huge change in their corporate, and I'm talking about these big giant corporates where a slight change means the entire ship has to go in another direction. It isn't easy. It's like it can be a disaster. Okay. And when it's a disaster, Wall Street doesn't look at why it failed. It just looks at the numbers that are showing there. And I know some of these CEOs, they did not give in to that pressure. Okay, they stuck to their hardware core of their industry. They not only made money, and I cannot name them publicly because they're still the CEOs and they are our clients. They not only made money publicly, not only did Wall Street rate them at the top. I can tell you these are the CEOs who stood head and shoulders above the rest. Okay, they stood head and shoulders above the rest for one reason: they trusted what is called their intuition. Okay, that's another power of I that I always speak about. In fact, in my third book, there's a lot about these real CEOs who have come up during these times. One of the biggest tools that I have ever taught to any executive is how to use the power of your intuition. You have to know how to use it. Now you can't go on Google and start searching, okay, Payal said how to use it, so let me just search, how do I get. What Google will give you, Dr. Neeta, and what it will give everyone is the general statements. Okay, general, what average people are doing. We don't want people to be average. Okay, but there are people who have used this power of intuition to know exactly how to take their business from point A to point B, from point B to point C. I know of corporate leaders who I have spoken this to about, and they have done these sessions with us, and this is just one part of the coaching. Okay, it's not like the whole coaching is based on intuition development, but leadership without developing the power of I, okay, is highly impossible to be a great leader. How do you develop that power? What are some of the tools that you use? You want to make sure that you begin to practice this every day. So just to answer your question, this is like one of the tools, I would say. And like you had mentioned it so clearly, Dr. Neeta, it is not one size fits all. I still do not remember any coaching session that I must have done or I must have come into the scene prepared. I've never come prepared because I don't know what you want. I don't know where you are. So every session is based on where you are and where you want to go. Where do you want to take your business? So I have never sat with anyone across the table or across the Zoom meeting on a one-on-one coaching and said, hey, you know what? I have these great tools. I do not have anything, but I do know how to take you from A place to B place, depending on where you are. Maybe you're a person who has already reached 60% of your business or your career. I cannot bring you back to 40% and say, I have tools of 40%. Let's start from there. No, let's start from where you are, from 60 to 100. How do I take you there? That's how at least that's how I believe I can help anyone.
So beautifully put. Before handing over to our Deepak sir, I would love to ask you one last question. So leadership has very beautiful base of empathy, of accountability, of integrity, and also definitely confidence, but not a complex confidence. I'm just talking about plain confidence. uh, how and in which way in your coaching sessions do you shuffle the all together? Because again, it's a process. It doesn't happen on one session, or it doesn't happen even in 3 months. It's a very difficult space from moving to point A to point B, and again coming back from point B to point A and understanding ki, oh, I could not get this. So
Yes.
how do you shuffle between the all the four with the leaders?
I think I always believe we live in echo chambers. Okay, when I say echo chambers, it means that we are surrounded by the same thinking every now and then. So even if you want to change and you hear from outside everything, it just puts you back in the same space. And that's when the reshuffling actually happens. You actually move a step ahead, and you begin to change your thinking based on just your dialogue and my dialogue that we would be having. But then again, you come back to point A, and point A is really not where I want you to be. I want you to be very relentless in your thinking. I want you to be very relentless in your moving upward. If there is one thing that I have ever said about leadership, it is that there's a brutal truth about leadership that is not out there. And the brutal truth about leadership, which I think I must have spoken on even my own podcast and my books, is that, and this is something which no one tells us when we are trying to work as a coach, or whether we are in a corporate world, or we are trying to do, is that leadership is something that you have to be willing to do from inside. It's really not an outside game. It's something you have to be willing to do from inside. And I it's really sad to see that many people believe that once I have a position or a title, or once I am on this chair, things are easy for me. I'm just done. People, I'll have followers. No, you're not going to have followers just because you are on that chair, or just because you've made a name for yourself. Your name is because of your work. I know of janitors who show leadership, and I know of executives who have no leadership skills at all. So this is one thing that I always talk to people between how they are moving from point A to B and then to C, is to be very sure that this is an inside game. And you have to be willing to play it internally on your own before you go out there and showcase to the world, hey, look, I am a leader. Really, no one is interested in your title, in your positions, and what you have achieved. In fact, Dr. Neeta, I must tell you, like here, we did not read my introduction, which was a fantastic thing you did, and I loved this conversation. And everywhere that my introduction is read, I always look back and I say, this introduction is just for today. Okay, it's not going to carry forward tomorrow if I have not done anything good today in my life. So for anyone to move from point A to point B, to reshuffle between where they are, to know exactly what their roots are, and where they want to see themselves, there is one question I always encourage everyone to ask. And I have asked this question to myself every single day of my life. How can I be of value to someone's life? Because today I am here speaking at Bloom with only one intention. I know, and in fact, I know Payal Irani, when she and I were talking, very sweet person, very, very sweet person. And she knows I've told her this many times. She asked me, she said, what would you like to speak about? I said, anything that you want me to speak about. Because I am here to add value. I am not here to showcase what I have done and what I could do more. But if any question of mine, if any answer can add value to someone's life, it can change someone's track of thinking, it can help them in their life, I think that's what I am here for. So if all of us can do that, what value can I add to the life of another person? Your leadership begins from that question. And that's how you reshuffle every time between where you are, where you want to go, where I was, how do I progress, what's my measure? That's how you measure it.
Payal, the fact that you mentioned that you were not introduced, there wasn't a formal introduction, that was actually on purpose. Yes, it was to see to it. Yes, that's the way it was designed to be today.
I loved it. In 21, in my 15 years of being even on the media and the press, this is the first time this has happened, and it's been so easy going. Very nice. Yeah. Really applaud you all for that.
So Deepak sir, I would just like to take 1 minute.
Yes, please.
This is my first co-hosting program which I'm doing with Deepak sir on Bloom, being the co-founder. But what I had in mind is we are already being known by a lot of people with our definitions and the tags and the labels. Yes. But what is there which Payal is ready to give back? And immediately as Bloom will become, after 1:30, Bloom will be the past. So in past, you will have one more thing to address. Yes, I did address at the Bloom platform. So again, the label and the tag changes. Yes. So yeah. I felt let's add something different and make it presentable. What people will see, that this
Yeah.
is adding value. Taking
Yeah.
that 45 minutes out and listening to the most credible person and adding values to our own core is where
Yeah.
I understand Bloom is also catering to. Thank you, Payal.
Yes.
Over to
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neeta. Wonderful line of questioning. Super questions. Great answers by Payal. The chat box is buzzing. There are people in this room who are leaders in their own space. All of them agree. These are great questions and super fantastic answers. I just want to take something which you said just now in your previous answer. You said, a janitor could be a good leader and a CEO may or may not really be a good leader. My question is, you've written 2 best-selling books on success. Is success different for somebody who is right at the top? Is success different for somebody who's there in the middle? And is success different for somebody who's right at the bottom? Someone like a janitor. How is success different for all these people?
Oh, that's a very beautiful question. Yes, I have seen success has different definitions for people, and it all depends on where you are on the pyramid of your career. A person who is, and it also depends on what you define success as. In my own life, for me, success means just doing what I am doing and creating value in the lives of people and getting more and more people to succeed in their work. Now, money becomes a byproduct of what you're doing. And as long as money is a byproduct of what you're doing, you're fine. But if money is the whole and sole purpose of your life, well, that's great because that's what success means to you.
Yeah.
And then another thing I've also observed is that the definition of success changes with every phase of your life. Okay, for a teenager, the definition of success is something very different as compared. So in my own team, I have millennials, I have Gen Xers, I have a lot of people in my team, both here and in New York, and I see that they come with a very different thinking, and I love that because that's how they are filling that gap for me. I could not think like a millennial. I'll be very honest, but I just love the way that they do their work. And success for them means as long as they are earning extremely well and they are being recognized, they are fine. And I do that for them. So I think your definition of success changes every time. What is important is helping me and helping others in my life. Okay, so if my definition of success is only about me, it's not going to be very long lasting in anyone's life. That's for sure. But if my definition of success is wholesome, it really takes everyone with them. At the same time, puts me up also. I think that's one of the best ways that you can move forward because you're helping others to move forward in their life also.
Yeah. Very, very, very well said. And my logical next question to you is this. You trained real big names, big companies on leadership, on success. Is success different, or is a work culture different in these companies? Is there a Tesla work culture? Is there a Facebook work culture? Is there a Google work culture? And how does that define success?
Absolutely, Mr. Deepak. The work culture is very, very important. In fact, I think in one of my books, I don't know which one, I wrote a question. Does the culture define the people, or does the culture define the people, or do the people define the culture? Okay, it's like the egg and the hen situation.
Yeah.
So I think this was in my second book, if I'm not mistaken. Does the leader define the culture, or does the culture define the leader? And it is so interconnected. It is so interfaced. You really cannot separate the two. Whatever culture I have seen in the companies, I have seen that it trickles down from the up. It does trickle down from the top management, how they behave, what is it that they do. It trickles down from the up. And when I said I have seen janitors showing a leadership, I really meant it. I cannot name the company up loud here, but there is this one company. It's in North Carolina, US, where I was invited to speak about a topic on leadership. And as I was entering the gate, there was the security guard. And I can tell you, I have never seen a security guard like him. it was winter, and I think that day the temperatures were almost getting into minus, and we were expecting snow that evening, and we were all jacketed up. I was in the cozy comfort of my car with the heater on, and here is this guard standing outside with gloves and everything, and I didn't have a smile on my face. I'll be very honest. Why? Because I was really feeling cold, and I'll be honest. I just don't like the winter. Okay, so especially when it comes down to the minus. And here he is, and I had to open my window, which I hated, and he's smiling and chatting with me and asking me how my day is. And I'm standing there looking at him. How do you stand out in this temperature and you're greeting me and you're excited about the day? And I spoke with him, and for a couple of minutes after that. And when I went in and I delivered the session, I spoke about him in the session. And when I met the chairman of that company, I asked him, I said, I want to really write about this person in my next book. So in my third book, he is going to be there, because I don't believe that I need to cover only chair people in my books. I think there are these people who are showing leadership, and that's why I really mean that janitors show leadership, security people show, and CEOs don't at many times. Yeah. And the way he did the things, and the reason why he is like this is because the chairman of that company is like this. He has never, ever exited the gate of that company without saying a hello or a greeting to that city. So I think it is so interlinked. It is very interlinked.
Yes. Yes. I mean, thank you. Thank you for sharing this example. I mean, it clearly shows that leadership culture goes out right from the top to the bottom. Having said that, many a times we find that, especially in these big, large companies, these conglomerates, when there is a leadership change, there are times when there is somebody who is actually growing up right from the bottom, gone up, and then becomes a leader. There are sometimes people just avoid that and bring in somebody from outside, and then they make him the leader, the CEO or whoever. At these times, how does the culture change work? Because this guy is just probably a big name. He's coming out from there and he's now wanting to lead this company. How does that work out?
It just depends. We have seen, at least in my own life, I have seen there are companies. I know of a company who brought someone at the executive post from UK to the US. Initially, it was a big change. They have a different culture. They have a different mindset. There was quite a lot of restructuring going on in the company at that time because of the new person. People, down the line began to leave the company and find other jobs. But at the same time, this person is still where she is. The company has now begun to pick up after almost 3 years of that person coming in. And then I have seen people going from the company and also taking up a new role in the same company. And that also at times has proven disastrous. Why? Because the person who is now was working with you is now working under you. So that becomes, that. So I think rather than thinking, do we need to bring a person from out, or do we need to take someone from our family and put them up there in the role? I think what we all need to consider is, what's the impact it's going to have? What's your company culture like? Is your company's culture built on a ground where people who move upward are seen as great leaders, and there is no ego, there's no ego clash between them, right?
Yes.
Or have you made a culture where people from outside have to be brought because you do not trust your own people? So I think we need to first figure out what's the culture we have created, and then take that step, rather than using any one formula which may have worked for a company in another country, in another space. That's how I feel.
Yes, yes. I think, again, I will take off from that last sentence which you said. There are country-specific cultures, country-specific traits. So a person who may be an Asian probably may or may not fit into an American culture, or somebody from the West may or may not fit into a Middle Eastern or an Eastern culture. Have you seen examples of this in your actual practice?
Yes, I did not fit in the American culture easily initially. So as long as I was working in corporate America, it was fine. But as soon as I stepped into a domain that was more white male dominated, in the leadership field, I don't think I really fitted in as such. And I'm glad I did not, Mr. Deepak, is because you're not supposed to fit in. That's the main thing. If you notice any of the great leaders, any of the business owners who have really made it in their life, they have never fitted in anywhere. Never. So I think we should not even think of fitting in anywhere. What we need to think, and at least that's what I had also thought in my life, is I need to think more about my work, about what I'll tell you one thing. America is one place in my life I have seen that really embraces work. Good work, good content, good thinking, good how you are conducting yourself. What are some of the ways that you are helping more people to grow? Is it a country that discriminates? I really would not support that, because I feel no country, no person has the ability to discriminate to anyone. Discrimination is a state of being. It's a state of mind. If there is something that you are going on saying to yourself, hey, this country is discriminative. Today I am here in India, I can say the same thing. Oh, India is discriminating. So there is no country that discriminates. No one has that power. You have to change your state of being and think, rather than thinking they are discriminating against me, you need to think, how do I fill that gap? How do I fill that gap so that I am also one amongst them? I am also the one who is providing something of value. And I think that's what I find every country, whether I am here in India today or I'm back in the US, I think every country is supportive. Every country is supportive. The people are great. You have to see how you are trying to merge with that culture and provide some value there, rather than being someone that this is me and please accept me because I have a name. I don't have any name, but the country is great. So very recently, Mr. Deepak, I was interviewed by one of the channels on asking a question. It will be out on YouTube. I think it's already out on YouTube. Can India be a developed country? And my answer was yes, it can be a developed country. It is on the verge of being a developed country. But the backbone of this country is the leadership. Not the ones sitting up there, but just people like you and me. Look at the great work that you all are doing at Bloom. This is leadership, where you're trying to change the country one piece at a time, one interview at a time, which is applausible.
Thank you for those kind words, Payal. And I would like to just inform the room that slowly there will be some sort of a collaboration between Payal and Bloom, where we will offer her leadership programs, her coaching to all those who are interested. This is coming up probably soon. Thank you, Payal. Also, you said that there is leadership at every rung. It can't be just that person on the top. In your opinion, are leaders born, or are they nurtured and, brought up slowly so that they can achieve leadership? Or suddenly somebody gets the chair one day and says, you tell him you sit and now start leading? Or is it a combination of all this?
That's a very nice one. And in fact, what you said, that's what happens. People get the chair and then they begin to think about leadership. Whereas I think what I always write is that leadership is an innate quality. I have a quote on my website, which I have derived years back, that leadership starts and ends with you. Okay, so basically you're born as a leader, you die as a leader. Okay, and in between what you do is what defines your leadership quality. That's the only thing you can do is, so there's a dash in between for each of us, okay? The day you are born, you're born as a leader. The day you die, you will die as a leader. There is no other definition. But in between of these times, the dash that is in between of those dates that will be written for you will define the quality of your leadership. Now, that quality has nothing to do with anything except how you are conducting yourself and responding to various situations at your workplace. How are you treating your workplace? For example, I know people, they tell me that, I'm working in a very negative work environment. And my question is, who is the creator of this negative environment? It really And immediately they tell me, oh yeah, it's my boss, Payal. And I'll tell you, Payal, it's also my colleagues. Okay, but I'm sure you are also instrumental in it. Okay. Now, and my next question to them is, can you tell me that you are a person who brings in a positive mindset, a leadership mindset every single day? And their answer is no. So your contribution in the workplace has to also be has to be seen. You really can't just unveil the negativity in a way that, oh, it's happening because of them, and then I will go somewhere. See, there is a corporate web. And what is a corporate web? A corporate web is the person working in Cisco wants to work for Apple. The person working for Apple wants to work for Google. The person from Google wants to leave Google and work for Amazon. And the person who is in Amazon wants to leave Amazon and come to Cisco. So, this is what I call a corporate web. And if you want to come out of this web, you have to see what is your individuality and contribution in the corporate world. As a leader, as someone who is out there in the field, what is your contribution like? And I think that's one question we have to ask our own self. That answer comes from inside.
Wonderful, super answer. I mean, there are so many things to keep on talking about, but we have other people in the room. We have Abhijit Sansgiri. He is one of our co-founders of Bloom. He is a CA by profession. He has impacted the lives of thousands of students, of those who have worked under him. He was the CFO of a listed company in India. He's been there, done that, about leadership. He would like to ask a few questions to you. Abhijit, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. So excellent deliberations over the last 1 hour, and strongly resonate. I think leadership is all about adding value with your values, which I put it. So two questions, quick. One is, you worked across leaders across the globe. What values do you think are different in, say, US or maybe Europe or India and the rest of Asia? That's one. And second, if you were, I believe in a lot of organizations where we, even as risk managers or risk consultants go in, they ask us to just fix some organization to some best practices across the globe, or what you've seen. So if have you been asked such when you're doing this executive coaching or executive roles, that what are the best practices which you can quickly fix? So these two. One is, what values you think differentiate the leaders across the globe, especially in certain parts? And what best practices have you been asked for? Or maybe if there is a quick fix to be done, what would you quick fix in India?
That's a nice one, Abhijit. And it was really nice interacting with you even earlier before we started this session. So thank you. When it comes to values, I think one level of value is the value in which you are working in. So basically, if the place you are in, the country you are in, so that defines the value of the person. I'll give you an example. A startling difference that I found was one of the biggest values of the Western world is trust. Okay. There is a lot of trust amongst people. There's a lot of trust amongst individuals in the company. If there is something that has been said that it will be done, it will be done. You don't have to even think twice about it. So when I came to India last year, it was during the COVID times that I came here. I did observe that trust is a little shakeable in here. Okay. Now, if I go on propaganding that and I say, oh, you have to be trusting, you have to develop the value of trust. No, the country doesn't have that foundation strong yet. It has the foundation, no doubt about it. But is it strong enough? Is it really strong enough that if I say that this is one leadership value you must have, will you be able to immediately imbibe it? The answer is no. It's the same thing. If I would go back there and say, oh, you really don't have to keep this trust factor so big. No, that is something that the foundation is built on. So I think number one is values should be also seen in the environment in which you are. That's number one. And that said, we are in a cross-cultural segment now for many years. And now because of the pandemic, the cross-cultural communication has gone big time. So it is very, very vital to pay attention to the values of the person you are even speaking with. And I'll give you a very, very classic example on this. There was this a regional head who I was coaching, and during one of the sessions, he complained constantly about his team in Russia. And he said, "Hey, you know what, Payal? Every time I talk to this manager in Russia, and I send him the proper email of these are the things that we have to do, these are the things we have to implement." He said, immediately the next email is, "Okay, when can we get on a call?" And he said, Payal, it's frustrating because in his role as a regional head in Dallas, he said it's too much to keep getting on a call every time. He's saying it's frustrating, and he's saying I've come to a point where I need to tell him either you get your work done or you please find something else. He's saying, because I can't do that, Payal. It's highly impossible. And then I told him, I said, do you even realize why this is happening? He said, yeah, because he doesn't understand. I said, no, it's not because he doesn't understand. It's the cross-cultural difference in the communication. I said, look, here in America, we are very, very tuned to communicate only via email. There is no other mode of communication. One email with all the pointers is good enough for you to realize what I'm trying to tell you. But I said, if you step outside and you go to the Asian world, and especially in Russia or Japan or Philippines or India, I said, it is a culture to get on a call, to really, see where we are going, exactly where we are trying to head. Did I understand you correctly? And I said, that's an awesome space that they have created, and we need to respect that. He said, oh, is it? I said, why don't you try this? I said, next time when you send an email and he says, get on a call, just get on a 2-minute call. You don't have to make it a 30-minute call. I said, it will ease him down because he has to go to his people and explain. And that's how they communicate there. So I think values are now very interchangeable. It's not my value can be yours. I have to know how to imbibe each other's values and make it bigger than what I am currently doing. So that I hope that's answering the question.
Yes, thanks. So I would say I generally used to speak whenever on leadership or some discussions. I usually leaders have to be fat. I said fairness, authenticity, and trust. I believe that would be common across all leaders.
Absolutely. I completely agree to that. That is common across everyone, your integrity. Nothing, I would have someone more have integrity in my office than someone who is just skilled and lacks integrity. I so support that.
Thanks. Yeah. Deepak.
Thank you, Abhijit, for asking those questions, and thank you, Payal, for those answers. At this point, there were a few questions on the chat, and there were a few people who had raised their hands. So if you want to ask Payal a question directly, you could unmute yourself and ask, or if you want, you could type it in the chat and I will read it out for you. Anyone? Preksha had raised her hands. Preksha, are you there?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Just a normal question, as you said that on leadership, you mentioned the point about the change in people and the big name that affect a lot of factors. So how does it really actually help? A lot of time we have seen that a lot of people are big brand names, but there is nothing inside it. Okay, that's called khokhlapan. So how do you change it into wisdom and make it the best one? And how does this kind of leadership gets into enlightened leadership everywhere, where we bright just go everywhere and bright surrounding?
Thank you so much, Preksha, right?
Yes.
Preksha, you said one word in the Hindi language. I did not understand that. I'm sorry. What would that mean?
She said khokhlapan, somebody who is hollow inside but has these airs about leadership. So
oh yes, absolutely, Preksha. That is an awesome question. I think I will come back to my same statement. Your work speaks for you. There is, in my own life, I don't think there is anything I can say apart from the work speaks for you. Yes, there are a number of people who we meet in our lives who do say that they are here, but when you look at them and when you converse with them and when they have to share their thoughts, you feel, oh, you're not here. You're in fact here. And maybe I did a mistake connecting with you. I think that usually happens when people are in a hurry to become successful in their lives. big hurry. They want, and that's because the society. When I say society, I don't mean India. I mean a society of the world at large. Everywhere that you go, there is a lot of spotlight and focus on your social media followers, okay, on your on how many people know you, and what's the brand image you are carrying. And it all depends on how you are as a person. I'm not a social media person. My team handles my social media. I don't care whether I have 200 followers or 2 million followers, but I do care that I have trained 1 million more people in the world. I do care of that because I feel that has changed their life. And I know there are people who have asked me, "Oh, how many social media followers you have?" I said, "I don't know." And I really don't worry about it. But if I can change your life in some way and I can help you to become a big leader, I think that's the number I'm more interested in today. So you want to see, people who connect based on numbers, based on followers, based on success, that this is my brand image. You want to do a good research on them before you even invite them in your life or on any place that you feel like. So I think that's how I would take it, Riksha. Just to answer
Thank
it
you.
quickly and very short.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Payal, for that answer. And in the room present just now, we have two big real leaders in their own right. I would ask them to unmute yourselves one by one and say a few words. We have Brigadier Sushil Bhasin. He's from the army, and nobody else, you can talk about leadership rather than somebody who has been there in the army. So, Brigadier Sir, your 2 cents on leadership and what you have heard, and your talks, questions, comments on what we have been listening in the last 1 hour.
Thank you very much, Deepak. It's been very nice being here. First thing is, right from the beginning, when I just entered the room, and I entered about 5 minutes after it had started, I think Payal has kept me engrossed every moment. I think whatever she said resonated very well with what I have been saying. And yes, to me, everything about leadership takes me back to the military leadership, because I feel that is what we learned by being there in it. We were never taught leadership. I have not, in the army, never, not even once. No, I wouldn't say that. I think I remember a leadership lesson by the Commandant of Staff College. But that was after 13 years of my service. And the first 13 years, I think there was not a single class on leadership. But we were, right from the time you went to NDA, you went there as ordinary beings. We were told that this is a factory. The National Defense Academy is a factory. It was called a cradle of leadership, where ordinary people come and extraordinary people leave. And that is why I said leaders are made. Leaders are made. Yes, you pick up people when the people are selected for NDA. You pick up a basic material that is he coachable, is he learnable. But thereafter, I think it's all about grooming a leader. And if in my 34 years in the army, starting from, and if I count my 4 years of training, it is 38 years, I can tell you books. I mean, I've read lots and lots of books on leadership, and they help. They give you a different perspective. They give you a little, more strength. But books alone can never teach you leadership. You can't read leadership, like you can't learn swimming through books. You can't learn cycling through books. You can't learn leadership through books. Yeah. And I do find people who have never been a leader a day in their life, other than, of course, leading themselves, because we are all leaders. We are all leaders because we lead ourselves. Yeah. Okay. And I find that a 25-year-old guy is teaching leadership on a stage where he has never led anyone other than maybe his dog. Okay. So I'm very happy with whatever Payal has said. In fact, I just sent her a DM that I would love to connect with her, because lots and lots of things that she said do bring me to a space where I would like to interact with her and know more. Because 17 years after I left the army, I've been teaching leadership, but I've not been teaching. I have been doing experiential learning in leadership and team building in the corporate world in a very different environment where it was all experienced. I never taught them.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you for the space, and thank you, Deepak, for calling me over.
Thank you, Brigadier sir. We also have with us Harish Mehta sir. Harish Mehta is the president of the Mumbai chapter of the Professional Speakers Association of India, and he also speaks on leadership. He coaches leaders. He speaks to CXOs, C-suite people. A few words from you, Harish ji, on what we have had this last 60 minutes discussion with Payal and all your inputs.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Happy and proud to be a part of your Bloom, and thank you for inviting me, especially today. Payal, it was great listening you, your perspective. I have been in a leadership role from a very young age of 20, led the bank at 23, quit the bank at 40, built an organization from 40 to 50, and now 52 to 63 today. I am helping, encouraging people to shift their mindsets to lead. And during the last 18 months, I've been speaking only of scarcity to abundance in the mind. So I'm happy and proud to listen to your perspective. One thing which I would like to mention to all the people here: get the emotional connect on day one. And that's the thing that is required to be a leader. Be more listener than speaker. And number two, I am also doing a program, East Meets West in Leadership, from a lady in Guyana. And I speak my perspective of India and this part of the world. I must share with you, this is the only thing which is missing between leaders in India and this part of the world and leaders in that part of the world. The emotional connect, once you have it, people take ownership of their business, their life, and what they do in organizations. So great listening, and thank you for making me speak these two words. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Payal. You're doing a great job, and I'm happy to be a part of Bloom. And thank you, Payal. Nanjiani. Yeah.
Thank you, Harish sir, for your kind words. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being here. We have Meera Warsowski. She's joining us from London. Meera, you had a question. So if you can hear me, you could unmute yourself and ask.
Good morning, wonderful Bloom. Good morning, all beautiful participants and amazing speaker, Payal. So I have a question for her. Very interesting session. I love it. My question is with regards to our abilities. What you would recommend us to strengthen our abilities so we can move forward with our lives?
That's a great one, Meera. If there was one ability that I could really focus on during this time, I would piggyback and say what Mr. Harish Mehta said, you know, your emotional connect. I would really piggyback that. Like he mentioned, you know, wherever you are in the world, today we are all online. We are not physically present in front of each other. When you're physically present, it's very easy to connect with people. Yes. But the world is going to go more and more into the virtual and the hybrid. And companies that don't adapt to the hybrid model are going to fail very soon in the real world when it opens up. So the emotional connect, how do you build that emotional connect virtually with people? In fact, I know I had one guest on my podcast. She's the CIO of a company, and she spoke about how she connects with her virtual team almost every single day and how happy they are, and they can see those faces, you know. So I think the emotional connect virtually is what's going to really help and build that ability.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal. Brigadier sir, you had a question.
Deepak, just a minute.
Yes. Abhijit first and then Brigadier sir. Yeah.
So no program of Bloom can be complete without a question being asked by Premraj. I'm silently listening, so I'm asking Premraj. I call him the host of India. I think he's the one who starts off for Bloom for the last 50 years, and he's just silently listening. I think one of the key leadership skills is to listen.
Yes.
So I'm just asking.
Yes, Premraj, please go ahead.
Thank you, Abhijit, and thank you, Deepak. Payal, thank you for a great session. It's been a revelation listening to you and all the inputs that you've shared about the US, from the US. My question to you is, what is your take on servant leadership?
Oh, that's really nice.
Thank you.
I don't know if how many of you know about Howard Bihar. He's the ex-president of Starbucks. And he did a whole episode on my podcast on the same thing that Mr. Premraj has asked, servant leadership, and how he brought that into Starbucks, and it generated billions of dollars and changed the face of it. So I think servant leadership, whatever name we give it, it has only one basic quality, which is to think about others. Okay, I usually don't, I always tell people, rather than thinking about yourself, think about others. In one line, that is exactly what it would actually imbibe. Now we give it many names, whatever name you call it by. How well can you lead the people to do things which you want them to do? They do not want to do it, but at the same time, they are inspired to do it. So that's how you are actually, I always tell people, I said, don't feel your teams are here for you. They are not here to work for you. You are here for them. They are only here to support you. They are here to take you and themselves ahead. So there are many people who feel, oh, if I have a team, that's it. They are going to help in my growth. No, they are not here for you. Okay. So you are here for them. You are here for the company. How are you serving the company? How are you serving the team? One question that you can ask yourself as a leader that can come back to a servant leadership is, am I leaving my company better than what I found it?
Wonderful.
Am I leaving my company better than I found it? That one question will make you take those actions that you must have never thought of in your life.
Yes.
I hope that's answering it, Mr. Premraj.
Yes, Payal, thank you very much. And the Starbucks story that you shared is being implemented in a lot of other corporates. They have taken that lesson. Thank you for sharing.
Wonderful question, Premraj. And we are missing you hosting the Bloom Talk Show. So finish up whatever you are doing and join us back again. So Premraj has been the co-host of the Bloom Show since inception. We have had 65 episodes which I've had up to now. And Premraj has been there in 60 plus of the episodes as my co-host. So come back soon, Premraj.
I will.
I was just answering. A couple of them had written in the chat box about connecting. Yes, I am only on 2 places. I told you I'm not much on social media. I put a lot of resources on LinkedIn and I put a lot of resources on Instagram. So I love to connect with people all over. So if you just send a connection and you can say that you're connecting from Bloom, it will be easier to accept it than to reject it. So I'll be very happy to connect with everyone here, because all of you are such great minds. I have learned a lot of things.
Wonderful. So
Maybe
you have
Payal, you can
another 30 to 40 followers. Yes.
Payal, you can share your Insta handle so that people can actually follow you.
Okay, I will try, since I don't handle this, but I always respond to every message personally. So you can be rest assured that I always make it a point to answer to all emails, everything. So here's the one at Payal Nanjiani, and LinkedIn is with the same name, Payal Nanjiani.
Payal Nanjiani. You can't miss her. And Nanjiani is not a too common name, so you can't miss her. Yes.
I like that one then.
Brigadier sir, over to you.
So I just wanted to add one thing to what I said earlier, and that is particularly in this present COVID environment, that when we are talking of leadership, I think all of us need to start looking at what type of leadership will be really good for each one of us post-COVID. And it is not what is going to happen tomorrow. I have started looking at a time when we'll be coming out totally and the world will be totally different. So let's say about 6 months to a year from now, what can we predict the workplace to be and how will we handle that? And in that, I found that the most important thing a leader can convey to his people, he should have been doing it or she should have been doing it till now. But if not, if you tell your teams that I am with you, I don't know where we are going, but wherever we are going in that unknown exploration, I'm with you, I'm walking with you. This is one feeling that people always want. And again, even from our military leadership, it is when a leader exhibits this willingness that I'm with you when there's danger, I'm with you in that danger. That is one very, very important thing. So when you're absolutely honest without ambiguity, like your candor, what we say, or your communications are absolutely clear, unambiguous, and in the hybrid world, this was one of the main things. In the beginning of the COVID, I think I was doing more programs on this, on handling remote or remotely leading your teams. It had become a big problem of communication and leading your teams remotely. And empathy, flexibility, and adaptability. These are things which we'll have to really, really refine from the post-COVID point of view, where things will be a little different than what they were earlier. Thank you.
This program has brought up a lot of acronyms. You know, there are the 3 I's, then there is the FAT, which was suggested by Abhijit, and then you gave out a few more things. And when you said the unknown, there is something which I was just reminded, which was said in Star Trek. There is no such thing as the unknown, just something waiting to be discovered. So it is 1:45 just now, close to 1:45 on a Sunday afternoon. This is past lunchtime. We still have a full house of people who logged in, joined in when we started, and are still here. That speaks volumes to what they have learned and wanted to be connected with you, Payal. Thank you for joining us on Bloom today. We look forward to meeting you again very, very soon and having a collaboration where we, along with you, your skills, your leadership programs, can offer it to people over here in India and all over the world. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Neeta. Thank you, Abhijit, for joining me as a co-host, filling in for Prem Raj, who is busy with some other things on his personal side. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and looking forward to seeing you again next Saturday, 12:30, to meet another guest on Bloom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepak, Dr. Neeta, Payal Irani, and Abhijit. You all have done a wonderful job just to collaborate this, and I feel honored to be a part of Bloom and to Bloom with all of you. So thank you so much to all the participants. Lovely questions. And once again, it's a privilege to be here. What a wonderful platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal, for your
kind
words.
Very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
We love you. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, beautiful audiences. Thank you, Payal. You are such a dawn. Looking forward to meet you in person.
Same here.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.